The Future of Teaching. Conversation with global leaders. Powered by Center. What will teaching look like in 2030?
Welcome to the next episode of the Future of Teaching series. So today we have with us somebody who is a truly global leader. Stavros is the CEO of WISE, which stands for World Innovation Summit in Education, as many of you would know, is a flagship initiative of Qatar Foundation, and it's a global think tank dedicated to enabling the future of education through innovation. WISE's activities encompass research, capability building programs, advocacy, and so on. And Stavros, as the CEO of this organization, truly represents education across the globe, looks at education very deeply across the globe. Stavros himself comes with a very rich background. So long back, at some point, Stavros had an MBA from the London Business School and an LLB from the University of Bristol. He's a member of the Law Society of England and Wales and a fellow of the Royal Society for Encouragement of Arts, Manufactures and Commerce. Subsequently, he practiced law in the City of London and then joined McKinsey & Company, where he worked for about 5 years. Unlike many other consultants who stick with recommendations, Stavros not only was involved in the design of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, LKY School at the National University of Singapore. He also became the executive vice dean, later transitioning out of McKinsey & Company. And he was the dean of the school right up to 2012, after which he took over as the CEO of WISE. So welcome, Stavros. It's a pleasure and a real honor to have somebody like you who brings a rich set of perspectives on education from across the globe.
Thank you, Rami. It's a real pleasure to join you for this conversation, and thank you for that very, very, very kind and generous introduction. Thank you.
So Stavros, let me ask you as an opening question. Since you are running World Innovation Summit for Education and innovation is so core to what you do, how do you see the innovation in education translating into what is required from teaching in the next 10 to 20 years? And we'll drill deeper into some of this, but would love to get some opening thoughts.
Sure. I mean, that's really the $1 million question, Rami. Trying to sort of predict the future, if you will, and then reverse engineering from that what the role of the teacher might be. I learned some time ago that attempting to predict the future is something of a more of a miss than a hit exercise, and therefore I prefer to think in terms of of a series of scenarios, and then trying to work back from those plausible scenarios to see what some evergreen issues might be that would be good to be thinking about now in order to prepare ourselves for whatever future unfolds. And so in that context, I think when we look at the future of education, and perhaps where, I mean, not just innovation, but where social trends are pushing us, I see potentially three scenarios unfolding. One is the first is that we enter a period of mass, let's call it mass leisure, meaning automation, AI really takes over the commanding heights of the economy, so to speak, and jobs, are few and far between because machines are just that much better at, at performing even creative tasks, like writing and producing art and so on. And therefore, the education system, is as concerned with educating for leisure as it is with, preparing students for the workforce.
Interesting.
Another, potential future is one where there is increasing stratification in society. And these are not mutually exclusive futures, but there's increasing stratification in society. There is uh, a caste system of meritocracy. It's not explicit, but it's implicit. You have, roughly 10% of the population that remains economically active, and these are the folks that are, competing for spots in prime educational institutions are your kind of Ivy League and equivalent universities, or the very, very prestigious, typically private K-12 institutions. And there, the education system is really concerned with potentially a qualifications arm race. Schools, universities are interested in attracting the very best teachers and staff, and maintaining their status. And then the final sort of scenario that I want listeners maybe to reflect on is one where the world kind of grasps the challenge of posed by climate change, posed by growing geopolitical tensions, other kinds of disruptions that we see on the horizon, whether these are driven by technology or social movements. And we really think very deeply, and we act to transition our economies towards um, clean energy, um, and that requires a significant increase in the number of people with STEM um, degrees and the like. And there again, the teaching profession is potentially at the forefront of driving that. Um, Now, if we work back from all these potential futures, what can we say about teaching and the future of the teaching profession? Well, in my view, I think it whether you buy into these scenarios or not, teaching remains critical to the education enterprise. We know also, from work done by our alma mater, McKinsey, some years ago now, where they studied, education systems around the world, trying to really identify and pinpoint, what differentiates education systems that excel from those that do less well. And I think the one constant really was the quality of the teachers. So much so that the conclusion was, that education systems cannot rise above the quality of their teachers. And so I actually remain bullish about the future of the teaching profession, even in a world of AI, simply because I don't see AI ever being able to replace um, the kind of connection that a really good teacher can have with a student, with a classroom.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Stavros, lots of food for thought in what you said, and particularly this point about mass leisure is a very new idea that I'm coming across, and in fact, something that is absolutely worth looking at as a potential scenario. Before we go deeper into these scenarios, I'm going to do a very quick digression from our conversation, which is not a real digression. It is going to bring into the conversation two people who might represent pieces of this future that we are discussing. And in today, both of those teachers are from India. One of them is the principal of Sunbeam School, Sarnath, Varanasi, Miss Somita Chatterjee. She is a winner of CENTA International Teaching Professionals Olympiad multiple times, and has also been the national subject topper in her subject, senior secondary economics, a few years back. Very interestingly, she's somebody who leads from the front on testing herself, and therefore gets her teachers to regularly test their own competencies without being worried about consequences of such testing. The other person with us today is Ms. Monica Gupta, curriculum lead NCR at Clay Child Development and Care. She again is a multiple time winner of CENTA International Teaching Professionals Olympiad, and in particular was also one of the top rankers of the school leadership track in a recent year. So welcome, Ms. Somita, Ms. Monica, and I'm going to request Stavros on this quick segment with you to maybe, of course, congratulate you, but maybe ask you any question that may be on his mind. I'll leave it to Stavros. We'll take it from there.
Well, I mean, it's a pleasure to meet both of you, and many congratulations on the well-deserved recognitions that you both received. I guess in terms of questions, I mean, I'm curious because I am, while I study education closely, I'm somewhat removed, from the front lines of education, and I'd just love to get your perspectives on how you view the future of teaching, and what you're doing within your own organizations to prepare for that future.
So, with your permission, Ramya ma'am and sir, I would like to answer this question. I think, being associated with CENTA, the first thing which has come up in my organization, I leading an organization of dynamic human resources in the form of teachers, is that people have learned to come out of their comfort zones and to challenge themselves. So usually the role of teachers erstwhile was to challenge the students in the class when it came to testing their knowledge. But as I can see the future, and obviously even in the present day scenario, teachers are more into challenging themselves, their skills, so that they are prepared to deal with the students who are actually the 21st century learners. So 21st century skills are something which we are trying to impart in our kids. But obviously, as a teacher in the classroom, if I am not aware, if I am not equipped with those skills, how can I impart it effectively to my students? So obviously, the future of teaching depends a lot upon the upgradation of the teachers themselves, the teaching community themselves. They have to become more unconventional in terms of taking risks, in terms of allowing children to take risks, obviously under their guidance. And obviously, as I already mentioned, innovation. And as rightly, sir, you are also in that forte. Innovation, is the keyword everywhere. So teachers usually were not in that mindset of experimenting in the classroom. So I think experimentation, guided experimentation, innovation, creativity, problem solving, and learning along with the students in the classroom, that I think summarizes the future of teaching.
Thank you. Very, very nicely said, Ms. Somita. Ms. Monica,
Yeah, very,
your quick
very
thoughts.
well put.
Yeah, I align very much with Somita with your thoughts, and platform like Santa are inspiring for the teachers. Like before that, there was no recognition for self-motivated people. So Santa is bringing that due recognition, and yes, teachers are willing to challenge, and especially early childhood. I think this is the first one where teachers can really upgrade themselves, update themselves. There is so much to learn, not only the assessment, then there is so much to learn and go ahead. So things like this are surely the future of teaching.
And Ms. Monica, any quick thought on how you see early childhood teaching evolving in the next 10 years? Any top of mind thought on that?
Yeah. Yeah, early childhood, this is the first time when parent is sending, getting separated from the child. So anxiety levels are, most when in the early childhood education. After that, they are ready for the transition. So early childhood is good with the, NEP implementation and government coming formally into early childhood. It's really, really going to be very critical and most important part of child's education. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Somita, Ms. Monica. This is always a surprise section of our series, and our audience often looks forward to who are these two teachers from across the globe who are going to join our guest today. So thank you so much for being those two teachers with us today. And to go back to Stavros and the conversation with you.
No,
So
thank
Stavros,
you.
yeah, thank you. Coming back to the conversation that we were having before our guest teachers joined. You mentioned a bunch of potential scenarios, or two to three potential scenarios, and how education and therefore teaching could play out in those scenarios. And naturally, technology plays an important role by default in those scenarios. What are some of the competencies of teachers that you feel will be needed?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think it was covered very, very well uh, by Sumita in terms of how she described what she was trying to do with her teachers, which is really to encourage, creativity, innovation. I like the idea of controlled experimentation in the classroom to really figure out, what works, for a particular student or a particular group of students. As I reflect back on my own education experience and the standout teachers in my life, they were really teachers that went beyond the narrow confines of a particular curriculum or a particular class, and really tried to encourage us to think and act beyond the uh, the particular textbook or exercise or set of learning objectives that we had to meet in order to complete the class. So a very, very simple example from my primary school years. My I guess favorite English teacher was not just content to teach us how to read and write, but she introduced us to storytelling. She read to us fairly advanced books for for 8-year-olds, we were introduced to The Wizard of Oz. We were introduced to Tolkien, the Hobbit. Yes, these are children's texts, but they also have and touch upon adult themes that are enjoyed by adults today. And so not only did she introduce us to these stories, which were not technically part of the curriculum, but she also introduced us to theater and to staging productions of these stories, so that we could better understand them and better experience them. And these are things that have stayed with me, um, you know, um, throughout my life, and they're experiences that I wanted to expose my kids to as well. So to go beyond, uh, uh, beyond learning a language, but also seeing how, language can be used to tell stories and to, to inspire and to explore, potentially difficult uh, issues and challenging ideas. Um, and so I think that, in my mind, is what teachers ought to continue to do, and the good ones. And I absolutely agree with your with your guests that it's the job of the education system to provide that training to the teachers.
Sure. And,
Yeah.
and if I may ask, what was the name of this primary school teacher whom you remember? Do you remember her name?
I do very well, actually. Her name was Margaret Georgiadou. So she was an English lady, but married to a Greek Cypriot. I grew up in Cyprus,
In Cyprus.
and I had and I had her as my primary school teacher twice. Once when I
Oh,
was 8, and then again when I was 10.
in
So
which school
this
was
would
this?
have been this was the junior school in Nicosia, Cyprus. It was an English primary school.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, yeah, and there's an interesting little story as well. I came across her actually a few years ago. You're obviously familiar with Brexit, Ramia. I mean, the vote of the European Union to leave the vote of the United Kingdom, rather, to leave the European Union. Well, I don't know. There was a story a few years back that this grandmother organized a petition to ask Parliament to discuss the issue whether whether the UK should leave the European Union as per the result of the referendum, and it garnered over 6 million signatures. It was the most popular petition ever put before Parliament, and I discovered that the grandmother behind this petition was my old primary school teacher,
Oh,
and she yes,
interesting.
and she organized this using Twitter under the handle Gangsta Gran. So
Oh,
so she is quite quite the character, and was this just as a teacher, a very sort of dynamic and fun presence in our classroom.
wonderful, wonderful. We will wait.
Uh,
So,
yeah.
Stavros, moving forward a bit with your own journey, and I think our own thought processes on the future of education and teaching naturally get shaped by some of our own experiences, our own journey.
Yeah.
When did you decide to work in education? You have committed decades to improving the quality of education. When did you decide to do that?
I mean, I've the decision point. Um, Look, I had always enjoyed education, as a consumer, if I can use that term. I was very fortunate um, to have enjoyed my schooling, to have enjoyed university, and then graduate school as well. And so when I did the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy work at McKinsey, and I was invited by the dean to consider joining. At that point I thought, well, yeah, this looks like a very meaningful exercise. Again, I'd always been interested in education and always enjoyed being part of educational institutions. So I thought, okay, this is an opportunity to help actually build one, and be on the other side, as opposed to not the student side, but actually in the administration and in the faculty to help build that. And that's I began that journey, as you say, almost 2 decades ago.
Got it. And I guess,
Yeah.
and from there to WISE became a somewhat natural transition.
Yeah, again, it was an opportunity that presented itself. uh, I had at that time spent 7 years at the Lee Kuan Yew School. It was up and running, well established. I felt that my contribution going forward would have been marginal, not in a negative sense, but that I wasn't going to make any further significant contributions. And again, the opportunity presented itself to join what was then a very new organization, and to actually help again build it, and create something that will hopefully continue long after I have moved on.
Sure.
As was the case with the LKY school.
Yeah. You've been
Yeah.
a true institution builder in both cases, and these are institutions that continue long after the early teams. So
Yeah.
now as somebody who's seeing education from across the world,
And
rituals, and I
yeah.
think more what they stand for. I mean, more the characteristics, and yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think obviously passion for for not just for teaching, but for shaping minds and building futures, I think is really what some outstanding educators that I've come across. This is what really singles them out, from the crowd. That they really they have a very deep felt passion for the profession, and for actually seeing their students succeed and progress. And clearly that's that's a main driver. The other thing that and maybe this is natural given my own background and biases, I do admire those teachers that also go beyond their own success as teachers, and look to institutionalize their approach, look to share what they know and how they do it, so that they can improve the profession as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Because to a certain extent, you can be a great teacher, and of course, we all applaud that.
Yeah.
But I think again, exceptional teachers look to see how can they impact teaching beyond their own practice.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic point.
Yeah.
And even in our sort of million teacher community, we come across that subset of individuals who are keen to give back to that community,
Yeah.
and figure out how they can support others. And we are also trying to find ways to specially facilitate and celebrate that. that role of giving back to the profession. So that's a very interesting thought. And what is your quick advice for young teachers of today, people who are entering the profession, who are in their early years?
I mean, my advice is to stick with the profession. I'm sure you come across this, very often. We have, rates of burnout, amongst teachers. Of course, depending on the country, the profession may or may not get the recognition and the respect that it deserves. But I think if you're interested in doing really meaningful work that has an impact, beyond the immediate, and can really help, humanity, for lack of a better term, progress, then teaching is, as close as you can get to a truly noble calling, where you get to shape the future for hundreds, if not thousands, of young people. So I don't know if this is advice or maybe a plea, but we need good people in the teaching profession. We need people with ambition and with aspiration, to do good, and to support the young people, young and old people, of this world to thrive. And so please carry on.
Great. And last question before we close this conversation. We are running a large global survey for teachers as part of the same initiative. So we are trying to bring the voice of the teacher into saying, what is the future of teaching likely to look like? What should it look like? How do we collectively shape it? Now, if you were to ask a question as part of that survey, and we keep adding these questions from time to time, is there a question you want us to add?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're trying to do at WISE, Ramya, and maybe beyond this conversation, maybe we can discuss how we might collaborate, is actually trying to gauge teacher well-being. It's very interesting that again, your guests very eloquently and articulately spoke about the well-being of students as and learners as a central objective of the education enterprise. Well, I would argue that it's very hard to deliver that if we're not looking after the well-being of teachers. And so trying to understand the psychology of teachers in any given situation is I think something very useful. So I don't have a specific question about how one gets to that, but surveying their overall well-being, I think would be very, very interesting.
Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that, Stavros. So in fact, well-being is one of the important sections of this survey. But very glad to hear you talk about teacher well-being as a concrete pillar of the education system, and not only learner well-being, which of course is given. So thank you again, Stavros, for being with us. And I'm sure our audience enjoyed this conversation, and really wonderful to have someone like you, a global leader in education, in this conversation and thinking about the future of teaching and how we can collectively shape it. Thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure, Ramya. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.